So in lifting off, something interesting happens. And actually I'm going to put some colour into the skin above the eyebrow as well as I'm lifting off, so that it's not just white paper that I'm going back to. Yeah, and just keep figuring out where that is. It doesn't have to be set in stone. It's not like you're drawing and then colouring in. You're allowing everything to emerge gradually. And I'm plotting the landscape of the particular face that I'm seeing at this particular moment in time. It's not something that's that there's a right answer to. Okay, so I'm just pushing the hair back a little bit with the same kind of process with this. It's a 3/4 inch brush. It's quite handy to have a bit of scrap paper to hand just to see the colours that you're making. See what the colour is before you put it on your painting. I put down my palette for a while because I want to be a bit more free and loose here. So, yeah. So I just want to make a bit more sense of the bumps and hollows of the face. And the colour that's here is I think it's a mix of burnt sienna and ultramarine blue that I'm using to make the shadow on the face here. And so I'm kind of losing the line that was there before while also putting some colour in so that it can begin to undulate around the face. And then I think something here that breaks the rigid linear shadow down the nose, something there will be helpful I think too. So maybe just finding the edge of the nostril with a colour that's similar to that. And again, it doesn't have to be, it's still okay for it to be approximate and for it not to be fully decided. But of course you'd maybe, in your mind's eye, you'd kind of visualise the amount of space between the eyebrow and the nostril and the chin. It might be helpful also to relate it to other things. I'm just making some skin shapes here, the shadows. And sometimes using the paint that's already on the paper to manipulate that in order to sculpt it around the shape of the features. And I think with that in mind, I want to get rid of the edge, that's the clear edge that's there. Sometimes just breaking through the line just breaking the line is enough. And I can see that there's a bit of softness here where the nose meets the cheek. And so it might be quite helpful to break the line there. I think less is more, so whatever gets the effect you want without having to make a lot of marks. I think that's helpful. It's helpful to go from the smaller brushes to the larger brushes and to keep the large brush as an option all the time, all the way through the painting. And you can explain the edge of the face by painting the hair up to it. But like I said before, I wasn't too sure exactly what was happening here. So I'm still kind of letting that be for a while. Put a bit more colour in, couldn't I? It's kind of watery looking. And I want to put a touch more of the Van Dyke brown into it so that it's a bit darker and less blue. Because what I'm looking to find is the shadow of where the hair meets the jaw here. And it's quite a dark tone. Okay. And still keep an eye on how you feel. Keep an eye on your shoulders. Don't let them get tense. There's nothing's worth. Nothing that happens on the painting is worth you feeling rigid. And you'll probably find that you do better work and more satisfying. You enjoy the process more if there's a softness and a feeling of, a steady, grounded feeling. So make that a priority. And in the same way as I drew the line of the shoulder through the head and out the other side, I'm also finding the edge of the neck by drawing a line through the face, a vertical line through the face to meet that vertical of the neck, in order to see how much of the face is on either side of that line. And now this tone that I've got on the brush would work for the hair that's here, I think. And I'm noticing that it's quite far away from the hair that's here, similar tone. Quite far away from it, so I think I'll just place it there for now and see. And I need to remind myself to stand back often as well. So just because you're hours into the painting doesn't mean that it's not still helpful to stand back. And what does happen here is that there's a bit of an angle going that way that I haven't yet really pinned down. So I've used a mix of burnt sienna and ultramarine just to get something that's going in that direction. And even just a splash there to direct the paint, to just direct the paint down in the vertical at the back of the head there. And maybe with a mix of a little bit of cadmium red into it. I don't know if that would help or not, but I think sometimes if you feel inspired to do something with colour, it's better to just act on it. You'll know yourself, every situation is different. Probably knock a little bit off this corner here now, and it'll be different every time, but no harm to just lift it up, turn it that way so that the wet paint runs into the dark hair rather than into the light of the skin here. But it's the kind of thing of seeing things freshly as well. It's no harm turning it different ways and letting stuff happen. Like Paul Klee says, make chance essential. Do something that you're not in complete control of. And every time, make it an essential part of your working process, that you don't have a very clear fixed place to go, because that dulls your creativity, I think, and it stops you being excited. And maybe as soon as you feel boredom creeping in, I think that's a good time to stop and do something general elsewhere, or splash the painting, or I don't know, just take a risk really. Okay. So I think I'll turn it back up now. Okay, so now I think maybe something here. A bit more of the cerulean blue and lemon yellow isn't far off that colour. Something like that I think is okay there. It'll do for now anyway. And I'm just rechecking the height of the shoulder. It actually comes in now at a kind of a horizontal and then goes that way after a while. So there's this kind of an angle to it. And I wanted there to be a body there, so putting the drips running in that direction allows us to know that there's the cross section of the body that's underneath that shoulder. I mean, it's just a series of runs really, but I think it works okay. But I think it's helpful to use the runs and drips as a way of establishing the figure more firmly in space, and actually allowing her to occupy more than the space that she's in, but also expand into the surrounding area. And it's just good fun. It's really good fun slashing from the shoulder like that. Okay, so I want to go back into doing a little bit more to the area of the face now, and particularly to get the turn of the head by explaining the nose and the dark of the upper lip. So I'm starting to define the shape of the shadows in the mouth area a bit more clearly now. Again, it's a mix of the cadmium red and sap green, and a little bit of alizarin crimson in there as well. Just put a bit more sap green into it. And then some ultramarine blue to darken the colour so that it's clear enough to explain the cavity of the nostril. And finding the exact shape of the nostril is really useful because it allows you to get the turn of the head then. So whatever the shadows around the nose area are, when you find the darks of the nostrils, you'll be able to get a convincing turn in the nose. I'm wanting to bring the same dark depth of tone into the corner of the mouth there. And finding the corner of the mouth, if you look at the nostril on the edge of the jaw, the corner of the mouth is diagonally about halfway between the two of them. And then the dark of the line dividing the lips has a similar tone. So I'm looking really, I'm being very attentive here and really carefully observing each shadow shape and wanting now to clarify. It's almost like modelling in clay. You're wanting to find the shadows that are descriptive, that will describe the bumps and the hollows in the smaller areas. So this shadow that's underneath the lower lip is a really helpful one to explain the form in that area. And dissipating the dark a bit with some water and just allowing it to run to the edge of the jaw there. And of course the line of the water is a lovely way of explaining the shadow between the jaw and the neck. Just want to extend the shadow that's on the side of the face to run down the neck as well. It's helpful once you've done something considered to do something general somewhere else, just to draw out and see things in a general way again. Watercolour dries a shade lighter, and it means that you'll feel like re-establishing the darks as your painting progresses, and that's what I'm doing here. I'm finding some more shadow, some more dark in the hair on either side of the face, and placing these darks, and it's a mixture of ultramarine blue and Van Dyke brown again. It's almost got an Indian ink consistency, so there's a lot of pigment been lifted into the water here. So take your time mixing your pigment so that you've got enough pigment in, the consistency of pigment water is high so that you're able to really deepen the tone of an area. And it's placed, it's still fluid though, so as I say, it's like Indian ink. It's got a fluid consistency. And doing the darks out with the face has given me now a license to work in more contrast in the features. So I think when you darken the tones outside the face, it gives you permission then to kind of explore more darks in the face itself. And some of these darks are made by drips, the paint accumulating. That one there in the philtrum just above the upper lip, and then there's a drip up in the socket of the eye. And it's lovely when the drips anchor down the dark shape. So all the time making relationships between parts. So I'm looking at the position of this shadow in the eye in relationship to the corner of the mouth and how far the nose extends into the right side of the face. And drawing a straight line up, an imaginary straight line between these parts, allows you to locate them convincingly in the face. So any point of intersection, for example, the corner of that shadow, you could drop an imaginary straight line down and see where it would enter and exit other parts of the face. Just pulling up and letting the paint come back down. So it's like you're painting it once with the brush and then the water flowing back down is painting it a second time. It's quite interesting to see the layers beneath here. There's 3 or 4 different positions for the eyebrows before I arrived at this one. And I love that about painting, that you can be approximate. You can let it be good enough for now and move on, knowing that you can continue adjusting it later. And of course this paper allows you to make adjustments. Because it's robust enough, you're able to eat into it with a damp brush, even when the paint is dry. I think that bit of burnt sienna that I used on the neck allowed me to bring some more of that warm colour into the sockets of the eyes and now in the nostril and even down for the lips as well. So it's warming up the skin tone a little bit. And all the time really studying so that you can commit to the mark with courage and confidence. So a huge amount of this section is focusing keenly on the relationship of parts to each other. Really studying. And sometimes with my eyes half closed, so that I'm not seeing any of the detail, but finding the shapes of the shadows that carve out the position of the features. And the eye can be begun by looking at the shape of skin between the eyelid and the eyebrow. I find is a good way in to start explaining the eye. Because you're not exactly painting an eye then, you're just finding one diagonal. And you could maybe observe where that diagonal of the upper lid cuts through the shadow of the eye and see where the corner of the eye sits, the outer corner where that sits in relation to the bend in the nose, for example, and the horizontal there. So you're making relationships all the time. Or observing the relationship that is already there. And it's satisfying too when you see a colour to be able to just drop it in. So there's brightness coming into the lips. A bit more of the cadmium red being used here. And I think the warms in the face work because of the bluer tones in the hair and the green at the shoulders. Kind of have a license then to bring a bit of warmth into the skin. Yeah, and still making adjustments. You might feel that you're like windscreen wipers, sometimes going over and back from the model to the page, over and back, so you get into that rhythm of seeing and drawing down with where the thinking mind doesn't get in the way and you're just in the present.